which is one that's woof. You talk about coming up on a bag. God damn. So we got a story about Joe Rogan coming into some serious cash. I wonder how many people are hitting him up right now. Like, yo, it was good, yo. We haven't talked in a while. Let's conversate. Let's talk a little bit.
Well, you know who is hitting Joe up? Dana White. So he's obviously the president of the UFC. Joe Rogan has been a long time UFC like a commentator, announcers, personality in general. Dana White's like, Joe, do you plan on coming back to work? You know, are we gonna
Fuck no.
are we gonna see you on Monday? Maybe. I didn't see you log on to the Zoom call last week. No one's been able to get in touch with you. And Joe's just like, yo, listen, I got that hundo bag now. So, and I'm talking about 100 milli. So, but yeah, I would imagine people are coming out of the woodworks, not necessarily asking for handouts, but like trying to figure out, okay, how do I get a small piece of that Spotify money that Joe's about to get? And for anyone who's not aware, we're talking about the most recent announcement. Joe Rogan is now moving his platform to an exclusive partnership with Spotify. The deal is rumored. Has it been confirmed yet, or is?
Yeah. I think it's. I mean, he even announced it himself that he was going to be doing this. So yeah, it's more or less. And actually, can you sit back just a little bit for me?
Yeah. So like,
Yeah, there you go.
The deal or the numbers are roughly $100 million over what period of time? I'm not entirely sure. The details of the deal we're not sure yet, but it's about $100 million. So.
Yeah, and I can give a little bit of summary. So, and this comes from the Wall Street Journal. So Joe Rogan is taking his podcast exclusively to Spotify, and a licensing deal worth more than 100 million, according to a person familiar with the matter. Now, he already came out and, like I said, announced it himself. And also, like, I want it to be highlighted that this is a licensing deal. Like, they don't have the ownership of the actual show, but his full library dating back 11 years is to hit the service, and talking about Spotify in this case, September 1st, and become exclusive to Spotify after that, before the end of the year. His video podcast, which will appear, which will also appear on Spotify, will no longer be available on YouTube, which is fucking huge. That's gigantic. That's seismic news to know is happening because, you know, Joe Rogan is clearly a staple within a podcasting community. He set the standard for podcasters pretty much for, you know, like the last, I would say, you know, and I have no evidence to back this up. I haven't actually looked at it myself, but I would have to say at least for like the last 5 or 6 years, he's been sort of the standard bearer for podcasters. You know, in terms of always being kind of number one on iTunes or Apple Music, or whatever the fuck you call it these days. So yeah, Rogan, yeah, I don't even know what the fuck to say about this. Holy shit. 100, like what would be the first thing you do when if you sign that contract for 100 million? And I wonder if this is like for the year, or if it's for the length of the contract. Like, so for instance, if the contract is for like 4 years, right? Is this for the full length of the contract that he's going to get 100 billion or 100 billion? He's on his way, I guess, but 100 million, or is it per year that he has that contract that it's for? I don't know the details about that. Hopefully maybe somebody in the comment section below can let us know, but yeah, holy shit, dude.
Yeah, I mean, so obviously this, like, whenever these contracts are signed, right, it's not like you just get $100 million in your bank account. These deals are typically 100 million over a period of time. Like, let's just say it's 100 million a year. Do I think Joe Rogan can generate the Spotify platform $100 million a year? Absolutely, if not more, right? So let's say it's $100 million a year, right? What do you do? Like, where do you start? I don't know. and you know what? I don't take Joe Rogan as a guy to just like start wildly spending money. And, you know, I think Joe Rogan's had a lot of money for a long time. So it's at this point, I'm sure he knows how to spend that money, how to invest that money. But you gotta think a guy like Joe Rogan, who's an avid weed smoker, is gonna is gonna get some of the best quality product. I mean, straight from Afghanistan, that direct plug, and it's gonna be in mass. I'd buy a warehouse to store my weed, to be honest. That might be what he'll do. Get him one of those like Amazon warehouses and just stockpile. I wouldn't be surprised. Does he have his own line?
You mean a weed?
Yeah.
I mean, if he didn't before, he's going to have one now.
I'd be surprised if that's one of his first business ventures. Like, let me start my own hemp CBD weed line. Let me open up like retail locations, launch my own e-com platform. I think we're going to see a lot more coming from Joe Rogan now that he has this capital.
I honestly don't think that's necessarily going to be the case. I think it's actually probably going to be the case that he just kind of continues doing the same old shit that he always does, because it seems like that's what he enjoys. You know what I mean? Like, if you wanted to start a weed, dispensary or some shit, then he could have done that 10 times over. He might even have one now. I have no idea. But I would just suspect kind of what you were saying is that like he's not necessarily, clearly not like old money, but he's clearly had the money long enough that he knows like pretty much what to do, and he everything really now is just icing on the cake basically for him. And what sort of lets me know that is that he before he signed his deal with Spotify, he actually was kind of talking a little dirty about Spotify in terms of like they don't really pay shit, which he would be basically correct in saying that, to at least to some degree. And it's like, what does Spotify actually do? Like, really all they provide is a platform, right? Now, one of the hugest platforms, on earth in terms of, listening to music, as well as now, obviously with this deal, now the podcasting ventures. But he had the opportunity to basically tell Spotify to go piss off, and for him to essentially monetize the podcast himself, not partnering with YouTube, not partnering with Spotify, but just putting the podcast out himself, and then having people like pay $2 or $3 or whatever a pop to, buy into the, so that they can, receive the podcast, or whether it's, the entire podcast or just clips, whatever, I don't know. But he didn't do that because he's like, I don't want to do all that fucking work, because that takes work and planning. Now, he actually probably stands to make more money if he did that, but this is just the easier way to go, right?
Yeah.
At least to some extent. So, I respect the fact that he's just admitting, like, yeah, I don't feel like doing this shit myself. They pay me the money. I just keep sitting in the fucking chair, just keep talking about nonsense with people, and we both win. You know?
And you know what? This goes back to something that that it's kind of like a podcast I was listening to. I think it was like an interview that I was watching from, is it Draymond? It's the guy who started Fubu. He's also on Shark Tank.
I have no idea who the fuck you're talking about. But
you don't know, he started Fubu back in the day. He's like one of the sharks on Shark Tank. No idea. I got to pull it up really quickly. His name is.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and fill in this dead space.
No, his name is Damon John. John. He's an investor. He's a shark. He's an entrepreneur. Again, he was one of the. I think he started Fubu, the clothing company, back in the day. So he was talking about how, like, for a lot of people, the goal is to get like they may set their goal like, I want to be a millionaire, right? I want to make $1 million, right? And the question he asked, which I thought this was such a great question, is the simplest question in the world, like, why? Why do you want to be a millionaire? Why do you want $1 million? Why not 10 million, right? Why not 50 million? Why not 100 million? Why not, 500,000, right? That's a lot of money to make in a single year. $500,000 is a lot of money. Like, why when people set those monetary goals, like, why are those the goals, right? And I think you brought up an interesting point. Like, Joe Rogan, he's doing what he loves to do, like his podcast, right? he's been doing it successfully for a long period of time, and a part of that success is like this $100 million Spotify deal. But he doesn't really have to change much. Like, he doesn't have to go out and start doing new things, start building new things, start a new business. He could literally just keep doing his podcast, keep doing what he loves, keep smoking, and do nothing else. And in doing so, he'll continue to be happy, right? So anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there, right? To like, just because you're doing something and you start to make a little bit of money does not mean you have to start change with that thing that you're doing, right? If your goal is monetary, that's not always like the best way to go about doing your thing. You got to figure out why you're doing it. When you figure out why, when you know why, when you start doing it, when you get good at it, money will come. And I think that's just what we're seeing here from Joe Rogan. He's built this thing over time, and this is the result of putting like your time and dedication and effort into that thing. So huge shout out to him.
Yeah, 100%. Like, I got one time, give it up for my dude. Gotta get the, gotta give him the air horns real quick, because he came up on a bag, and he knew exactly what to do with that bag. So shout out to Joe. And yeah, and something that I guess all podcasters should try to aspire to. Obviously we're the Fade podcast, so we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about this particular story. I know we're a little late to the game, but it is what it is. Ladies and gentlemen, if you can comment below, just talk to us. Let us know what you think about the Rogan deal. Do you think he should have done it on his own? Should he have just waited to build out a platform for himself, or do you think he did the right thing in terms of partnering with Spotify? Especially given the fact that it's a licensing deal, not like an ownership deal, right? Like Spotify doesn't own the Joe Rogan Experience. He still owns it. It's just that they're licensing the thing for a stretch of time. And so who knows, maybe the next contract he signs after that, I don't know how long this contract is, but maybe the next one's like that much bigger, right? If this one hits, so we'll see. Pushing forward, we